So, inheritance concept, it is one of the object-oriented programming concept. So we can say in general, if you learn with according to C++, Java, or PHP language, or .NET, so any object-oriented programming languages, we can say. So this concept is common. Okay. So we will see with respect to Java. Okay. So what is inheritance, right? Okay, so inheritance is the process by which one object acquires the properties of another object. Okay, so in the terminology of Java, a class that is inherited is a superclass. The class that does the inheriting is a subclass. Okay, see here in terms of real world, so we have talked about object. Okay, for one object acquires the properties of another object. But when we go to the programming concept, so we can consider like class itself. Okay. So, but while telling the definition, we can tell this definition, that is inheritance is the proper process by which one object acquires the properties of another object. Okay. So actually in programming language, that means if you want to write a program by using object-oriented programming concept, without a class we cannot write. Okay, so actually the concept what we say is object-oriented programming. So object-oriented programming means like which is dependent on the object. That is object refers to real world. But when we start writing the program, if I want to mention an object in a program, because if I say object oriented program means, so we have to mention an object in a program, then only we can say that program belongs to the concept of object oriented program. Okay. If I want to mention an object in a program, then compulsory there should be a class. So without class, we cannot mention an object in a program. Okay. But with respect to real world, you can say just like if I say keyboard or mouse or monitor or computer system, these are all belongs to objects. So there we need not tell about the class, just an object in the real world. But when you apply in program, so real world concept that is object oriented, when you apply in program, compulsory we have to write the class concept. Okay. So here if I say inheritance is the process by which one object acquires the properties of another object is nothing but it is a process by which one class acquires the properties of another class. Like that also we can say. Because as I said, like in program, without a class object cannot exist. Okay, when you write a program using object-oriented programming language, without a class, object cannot exist. So if you say process by which one object acquires the properties of another object is nothing but process by which one class acquires the properties of another class. Okay. So in the terminology of Java, a class that is inherited is a superclass. So when we say inheritance, inherit means best example is like son or a daughter acquires the properties of parents. So that is inheritance concept. That means if one particular item acquires the properties of another item, one object acquiring the properties of another object. See, in terms of Java, we say object. In real world, we can say an element, an item, or a what you can call animal, like that. So if any living thing acquires the properties of another living thing, or if any non-living thing acquires the properties of another non-living thing, then that is nothing but the inheritance, inheriting. Okay. So when we talk with respect to programming language, so minimum two class we required. Okay. So whenever I say there is a concept of inheritance in this program, minimum two classes. Okay. Out of two classes, one class will be called as superclass, another class will be called as subclass. So we should know for which one we have to call it as a superclass and for which one we have to call it as a subclass. That is parent class, child class, base class, derived class. Many terms we can use here. Okay, base class, derived class, parent class, child class, superclass, subclass. In Java, we use these two words: superclass, subclass. Okay, so while understanding, you can understand it like parent class, child class, base class, derived class. Because in C++ we say base class and derived class. So when with respect to Java, we can say super class and subclass. Okay. Now, so in the terminology of Java, a class that is inherited is a superclass. The class that does the inheriting is a subclass. See, for example, if I say son is acquiring the properties of the father, okay, then we can say father as a superclass, son as a subclass. That means the class that does the inheriting, which acquires the properties, it is subclass, and which is giving the properties to the other class, that is superclass. So only in the terminology of Java, a class that is inherited is a superclass, and which does the inheriting process is called subclass. Therefore, a subclass is a specialized version of superclass. It inherits all of the instance variables and methods defined by superclass and its own unique elements. See, the meaning of this is, you just look at this diagram, okay? So as I said, minimum two classes are required if you want to tell about inheritance concept. Okay, with one class we cannot say inheritance concept. Okay, minimum two classes. See, when you consider two classes, so one will be called as superclass, another one will be called as subclass. Okay, see, whatever it is, whether it is a superclass, subclass, or if you consider only one class, there will be two things in class. One is instance variables, another one is methods. So we can say two parts of a class. Well, first part we can say instance variables, second part we can say methods of a class. Okay. So in superclass and subclass, same thing, two parts will be there, instance variables, methods. For superclass, you can call it as base class or parent class. For subclass, you can call it as derived class or child class. Okay. See, you just look at this arrow mark. So this arrow mark indicates inherit. Okay. So inherit means acquiring the properties. So here subclass will acquire the properties of superclass. So this arrow mark indicates inherit. And in Java, if you while writing a program, if I am telling that this particular class inherits the properties of superclass, then there I should use a word called as extends. Extends is a keyword. So in Java it is called as extends. In general thing, like in real world, you can say in word inherit. Okay, that is the general word from English. Okay, from English only we have taken the word extends. Okay, in Java we have to write it as extends. Then only we can say superclass and subclass. Okay. So in this diagram, we have two classes, superclass and subclass. In both the classes, we have instance variables and methods. I hope you people know what are instance variables and methods. Okay, variables means just like declaring int a comma b or float a comma b. That is the variables. Methods means, as we saw in the previous chapters, like constructor. Constructor is one method. Okay, like that. Volume is one method, like that. Okay, instance variables and methods. Okay. Now we will see inheritance basics. So to inherit a class, we simply incorporate the definition of one class into another by using the extends keyword. See, as I said, we require minimum two classes. Okay. Here, if you want to write the program by using inheritance concept, so if you want to inherit, and then we need to follow this syntax. That is, class. See, the general form of a class declaration that inherits a superclass is the just a minute. Okay, shown here. Class is a keyword. Subclass name. See, a subclass name means identifier. Understood? See, everywhere we come across keywords and identifiers. Okay, when we start learning the programming language, keywords and identifiers. Class is a keyword. Subclass name is an identifier. Extends is a keyword. Superclass name is an identifier. Superclass name is an identifier. So class is a keyword, subclass name is an identifier, extends is a keyword, superclass name is an identifier. Okay. So opening brace, starting of the class, closing brace, end of the class. Okay, and within that body of the class. So you can write any code of the class, right? You see just the words class and extends are keywords here. Okay, the words subclass name and superclass name are identifiers. So when you write the subclass name and superclass name, you have to follow the identifier rules. Okay. The following program creates a superclass called A and a subclass called B. The keyword extends is used to create a subclass of A. Okay. So I said minimum two classes, right? So here we have taken class A and class B. Okay. You see, I have written class A. So we are familiar with this. By this time, we know how to write a class, right? So when we write a class, I said like we have two things, instance variables and methods. So here I can say I and j. Okay. I and j are instance variables. Instance variables, and this display function. So function, or we can say method it is. Okay, instance variables and methods will be present inside the class. Okay, now coming to the second class, if I want to create one more class which should acquire the properties of class A. because I want to write an inheritance concept here. So create a subclass by extending class A. So this in this way you follow the syntax. We just compare with the syntax. So we will compare. Okay, we will start comparing. You see, just you look at the syntax. First thing, what I have to write, class. Class is a keyword. Yes, I have written class here. Then B is a subclass name. So that is an identifier. So when you write the identifiers, even you can write a single letter, whether a capital letter or small letter. Single letters are allowed in identifiers according to the rules of identifiers. So this B is a subclass name. Then according to syntax, I have to write the keyword called as extends. So extends keyword we have to write. Yes, I have written extends keyword. Then superclass name. So superclass name is A. Okay. So here what I can say, like B is a subclass. I can say B is a subclass and A is a superclass. So I have written subclass. In subclass, what I have done, like one instance variable, that is K is an instance variable. Okay. Then coming to the method, we have display K. So this is the method sum. This is one method. See, now you just look in this program. In class A, method display ij is there. Okay. And in class B, method display K and sum is there. Okay. So what happens here is class B acquires the properties of class A, right? If that is the case, so I can say display ij method we can inherit here, and even I and j variables. So that we will come to know in the main problem how this class B acquires the properties of another class. Okay, so we will go for the main method. Okay, A that is superclass. So only object name, just to look at the object name, however written super OB. That means that is nothing but object of superclass, right? Super OB is equals to new A. A is a constructor. So this line indicates the object super OB is created, that is of superclass. Then B sub OB, that is nothing but the object of subclass. Okay, so we have created objects of superclass and object of subclass. Okay, then the superclass may be used by itself. See, the meaning of this is like you see I and j, to which variable it belongs. I and j. If you go to the class, okay, I and j belongs to class A, that is superclass, right? I and j belongs to class A, that is superclass. Now, if I want to make use of I and j variables in main method, okay, what I have to do? You have to create object to that particular, which is related to that particular class. That means I and j is present in class A. First, you create the object of class A, then you make use of that. In class and objects also, we saw this concept, right? So only I can say super ob dot I is equals to 10, super ob dot j is equals to 20. See, right now, you people don't get confused with the access specifiers, private, public, and protected. Okay, because till now I have not written the access specifiers in any of the programs. If you look at the class and objects or strings chapter, wherever you see, I have not written private, public, and protected. In the packages chapter, I will tell you clearly about how to use these access specifiers in Java. Okay, just you try to understand this much, whatever it is present here. Okay, so now I want to make use of I and j variable in main function, in main method, that is in the different class. So I have to create the object of class A, then I can use it. So same thing I have done. So super ob dot I is equals to 10, super ob dot j is equals to 20, right? See in the below memory representation is there, I will show you. So print ln. So in the print statement, what I do, like display the contents of super ob. If you want to display the contents of super ob, we have the method called as display ij, which is present in class A. You call that method by using super ob object. Okay, that is object of superclass. So super ob object becomes the invoking object. So I think you people are remembering. Invoking object means before dot, whichever object you write, that is invoking object. So on this object, display ij method will be called. So when display ij method is called, whatever the instance variables we are taking with respect to class A, those variables only have to consider in this method also. So if you look at the method display ij, you see I and j values we are printing. So these I and j values you have to consider with respect to object of class A. Understood? we have to consider with the respect to object of class A. So object of class A is what? Super OB. Okay, object of class A is super OB. See, still I have not showed the memory representation, so I will explain clearly. But directly I'm explaining in the program because you people have to use to it. That means it should become habit for you, like trying to understand with the program itself. Okay, because in big projects, for everywhere you cannot draw the memory representation. So directly you have to understand. Like here we have only like 20-25 lines of program, maximum 50 lines of program. But in big projects, what happens in one module itself, like 1,000 lines of programs will be there. Okay, there we cannot write memory representation for each line and all, because one complete project may contain like lakhs together lines. Okay. So it will be divided into modules, and each module will be assigned to team members in company. So it is like a teamwork. Okay. So for one person, one module or two modules will be assigned, and each module may contain minimum like 1,000 lines, 1,000, 2,000 lines. Therefore, every line we cannot write memory representation. Okay. So what I will do, I will explain with respect to program itself. So just we will try to understand. Then we will go for memory representation, right? So here, super OB dot display ij. If you look at this method, display ij method will be called. So when display ij method will be called, I and j values are displayed. So when I and j values are displayed with respect to what? With respect to class A. So that is whatever values you have stored. So I value is 10, j value is 20, right? Next, coming to the subclass. Okay, so when you come to the subclass, sub ob dot I is equals to 7, sub ob dot j is equals to 8, sub ob dot k is equals to 9. See, you see I and j variables, actually it is not present in the class B, right? I and j variable, it is not declared in the class B, only k variable is declared. But still class B can acquire the properties of class A. That means class B can use the variables of I and j, because here it is inheriting. So there is an inheritance concept. So class B acquires the properties of class A. Properties means here I and j variables plus display method, two things, instance variable and methods, I and j variables and display method. So if you see, by using object of subclass only, we are accessing variable I. That means we are storing the value of I in sub OB. That is, sorry, in I and j we are storing by using subclass object. Okay, sub OB dot I is equals to 7, sub OB dot j is equals to 8, sub OB dot k is equals to 9, 10. So those values we are printing. So sub OB dot display ij. So ijk values with respect to sub OB, that is class B, it is displayed. Next, sub OB dot display k. Okay. See, for this line there is no confusion, because display k method belongs to class B, that is subclass, and the sub OB is the object of subclass. So both are matching here. Method belongs to class B, object belongs to class B. Okay. Only in case of these three lines, ij belongs to class A, but sub OB object belongs to class B. So there we have to understand inheritance concept. Okay. Next. So sum of I, j and k in sub OB. So sub OB dot sum. So here also, for this method also, there is, for this line also there is no confusion. Sum method belongs to class B, sub OB object belongs to class B. So both are matching. So object and method both belongs to same class. Okay. Now we will go for the memory representation. Okay. Okay. Okay, before I tell the memory representation, again I'm telling, don't get confused with private public protected, because in C++, when we have discussed about inheritance chapter, there first only they are mentioning like private instance variables cannot be inherited, public and protected can be inherited, then it follows. But here till here we have not spoken about access specifiers. Okay, so we will see where we come across access specifiers, there we will discuss. Now we look at the memory representation. Okay. Class A is called superclass, class B is called subclass. Extends means get the properties. So class B will acquire the properties of class A. So you just look at the memory representation, that is how I have drawn the boxes. It is very much clear. See, ij declaration of variable is in class A. Okay, I and j declaration of variable is in class A. See, once again I have written in class B. The meaning of that is, while executing, it happens like that. That means when I say class B acquires the properties of class A, So you can take this I and j in class B, but don't write in the program. While executing, it happens like that. You have to understand. Okay. So actually, it belongs to class A, but in class B also it will come. Because that is nothing but inheriting. K belongs to class B only. Separate it is. K we have not written class A, so it belongs to class B only. Now coming to the method. Coming to the method, display K and some method belongs to class B only directly. Whereas display ij actually it is a method of class A, because there is inheritance concept. So display ij once again you can take in class B. Again I'm telling, don't write in the program like that. While you execute the program, while you try to analyze the program, you can think of this memory representation. Okay, that is this diagram. Now coming to the program, A super OB is equals to new A. So super OB object is created, sub OB object is created. So when you say super OB dot I equal to 10, super OB dot j is equals to 20, you can consider this memory representation of an object, that is superclass object. I value is 10, j value is 20. Similarly, when you say sub OB object, that is object of subclass, that is class B. So here you can consider I, j and k variables. 3 variables you can consider. That is I and j from class A. J directly belongs to class B. Okay, so you can store values for all the variables. So I equal to 7, j equal to 8, k equal to 9. So you can consider this memory representation. Okay. Now when you call the methods, what happens you see. When you call super OB dot display ij method is called. When you say sub OB dot display ij, again display ij method is called. See, display ij method is present in class A. You can call that method by using superclass object as well as subclass object. Understood? You can call that method by using superclass object and subclass object. Okay. Next, display k. Display k belongs only to class B. So you have to call only by using subclass object. Okay. You have to call only by subclass object. And some method, it belongs only to class B. So you have to call by using subclass object. So only sub OB dot display k, sub OB dot sum. So you just look at the arrow mark. So the method will be called, program control will go to that method, the values are displayed. Now you'll see the output here. Okay. So this is the output. Contents of super OB, that is whatever the values stored with respect to class A, I and j, 10, 20. Contents of sub OB. So I and j still we are storing by using subclass object. So it is displaying 7 and 8. Then contents of k. Then sum of I, j and k in sub OB. Okay. I plus j plus k is equals to 24. Okay. So you can look at the memory representation and output. So if you come across any doubts, you can ask. Okay. So in the above program, subclass B includes all the members of its superclass A. That is why sub OB, that is object of subclass, can access I and j and call display ij. And also inside sum, I and j can be referred to directly as if they were part of B. Even though A is a superclass for B, it is also a completely different, independent standalone class. Being a superclass for subclass doesn't mean that a superclass cannot be used by itself. Further, a subclass can be a superclass for another class. Okay, see, after every program, some explanation will be there. So you just read once that explanation so that you get a clear idea of the program. Okay, so what they're telling in the above program, subclass B includes all the members of its superclass. See, as I said in the memory representation, so when you look at the subclass, all the members of superclass means only I and j are there. So we can consider I and j in class B. That is nothing but all the members of superclass. Okay. So in addition to that, its own member, its own variable, that is k. Okay. That is why sub OB can access I and j and can display ij. Also inside some I and j can be referred to directly as if they were a part of B. Even though A is a superclass for B, it is also completely independent standalone class. See, the meaning of it is if you want to access the variables of class A, you need not depend on class B. Directly you can access. So only there's a standalone class. That means independent. So being a superclass for a subclass doesn't mean that the superclass cannot be used by itself. That means it will be not dependent on class B. if I say class A is a super class, it is not dependent on class B. Class B will be dependent on class A. Further, a subclass can be a super class for another class. So this we will see in the further topic.